I think there's a lot of different levels here. One as like a whole, how that might be achieved, and then two, how it's specifically done with the topic of cannabis. Because you've got to partially meet your audience halfway, and to me, this really is similar to like UX and other design practices that I really like to do. So it's kind of an application of two parts of the brain, like the left and the right side, like the creative side, and then the creative aesthetic, feely side, and then the logical, rational side of things. So in a perfect world, like we're blending those two pretty seamlessly. So we're making something, and my approach is to whenever it's like a visual piece, so an infographic, is to have the layout and the look of it be so aesthetically pleasing that it draws you in without even knowing what the subject is or what the topic is. And then as somebody kind of comes nearer or looks closer, they get a taste of what the topic is and what kind of the meat of the infographic is all about. But it kind of checks the box of looking good at first. And I feel like that's half the battle with somebody who wants to learn or engage with something informational. There's plenty of infographics that look like hot garbage that are still really great to, check out. And it's like, wow, that's very interesting data you collected there. But in terms of having it be something that is lasting in your memory and something that somebody will want to look at over and over again, it's that the wild card is that aesthetic element. So when we're kind of putting together ideas for infographics, we do kind of take that design approach first, just to make sure that we're able to better communicate, because we want to, at the end, we want people to like to look at this stuff and retain it. And part of that is, a repeat view, somebody wanting to look at it again. So that aesthetic part is very important. And it's also super disarming. And when we started back in 2016, that was super important because there were not a lot of cannabis brands that kind of took this mature, measured approach with their aesthetic. And we were one of the first ones to do that, and it caught people off guard. And I liked that. And I liked making everything kind of discreet. So we don't have huge words of, the evocative nature of cannabis, or, other terms. It's more subtle. It's more like, hey, this is if it's a scientific piece, this is about cannabinoids or molecular structures or something. And then you're like, okay, and you look a little closer and you're like, oh, it's cannabis molecular structures or whatever. And I kind of liked doing that. And I found that when it came to a lot of the cannabis is a polarizing topic, maybe a little less so today, but back in 2016 it was. And that was important for us starting out. We didn't want people to judge us at first glance. We wanted them to be like, oh, that looks neat. Let me look closer. Wow, look at all this information. Oh, that's cool. And then they make the connection that this is about the endocannabinoid system or whatever it is. And at that point, their judgments are kind of pushed to the side, and they're a little bit more open-minded to looking at whatever it is we're communicating. So that's kind of been our process with design from the start, and we really haven't deviated from it, even though the aesthetic that we do, which is like this very clean minimalist touch, is a lot more prevalent and popular nowadays with not just cannabis brands, but a lot of entities out there. There's a lot to communicate. How do you kind of do it easily? And I think just the way we've broken up stuff with our infographics, or if you're in the journal, the guided entries, or even the infographics in the journal, it's only ever one little bite size at a time. So you're not blowing their cap off with too much information at any one moment. If they're done, if the viewer's done with it and it's I've got all I want, they can totally walk away and come back later, and there will be another little bite size bit waiting for them. So I agree that I think is also an important way to to handle the topic. Yeah, so at Goldleaf, we've definitely tackled, I would say, most of the core subjects surrounding cannabis, from cultivation, culinary arts, wellness and healing, recreation, even pets and intimacy. Nerding out on like the terpenes and aroma and flavor profiles. So the way we kind of landed on those, honestly, like we started with, when we kind of started on this journey, there was so much to talk about. It was a little overwhelming, but again, we're just kind of taking it one niche at a time. And within those, it kind of, honestly, it kind of felt really obvious what we needed to touch. Some of that was from research, trying to find out what questions people constantly had, either through conversations with their bud tender or with their RN or doctor, or what they're typing into search engines, what they're trying to figure out. And so we kind of use that as a roadmap to come up with new topics. What things were people getting like really bamboozled by? And so then we would create standalone infographics to kind of answer those questions. If it was a bigger subject like intimacy or something, we would maybe have a more like kitted approach, like with a journal and some guidance. And whenever we did this stuff, we would always kind of partner with like an expert in the field. So like with culinary stuff, I know you talked to Monica recently. We worked with her for some pretty cool recipes for that kind of went along with our cooking journal. But yeah, so that was one topic that has just a treasure trove of nuance and questions about it, which is like cooking with cannabis at home. So you're not a chef maybe, but you want to make your own concentrates or oils or whatever. So we kind of have this guided cookbook for just those instances. And then we kind of pair that with a bunch of information and infographics that'll help you kind of make better stuff, like the concept of decarboxylation, how you can figure out the dosing in any type of food you're making, whether it be lasagna or gummies, So just like little tips surrounding that. But again, a lot of that is informed by just conversations we've had with the community, and doing our research and finding out what people are curious about or confused about. Another good example was this collaboration we did with MJ Arsenal, which is they make glass, and their focus is concentrates, and that's something that California is very ahead of, but the rest of the country is like super behind, especially when there are synonyms for virtually every term. So what somebody in Southern California might call like butter, BHO or something, might be a totally different vernacular in Michigan or somewhere else. So we this was a little bit less, like normally we'll match with like primary source research materials for all of our wellness stuff, but in this case there's not like a source of truth for concentrates. So we worked with MJ Arsenal and we did a big survey where we talked to 200 people who work in the industry as processors or whatever, and basically did a poll of how they would rate all of these different concentrate types. And then we made an infographic and published it. So on one side, it tells you exactly what all these words mean that you might be seeing. And then on the other side, it's a rating from people who work with this stuff, what they think, how good they think it is, how it stacks up with the others in terms of stuff like purity or enjoyment and flavor and stuff like that. So that was a really cool project. And yeah, hopefully that helps answer this too, like how we kind of come to these seemingly random little nuances. But with cannabis, I feel like we've really tackled all of the low-hanging fruit. Like we've gone down lots of rabbit holes, and so there's only a handful of projects we have on the burner in terms of infographics. Some of them are, this one that I'm really excited about is been on the back burner for a while because it's really complicated. And it's kind of a choose your own adventure infographic. So, and we've got different versions of them, but the idea is like, if you come to a dispensary or trying to understand like, what should I try? It basically asks you a question, and depending on your answer, you travel down the map, and it asks you another question, and you travel down the map until it leads you to sort of not a diagnosis, but a recommendation of what you should try. And again, the slippery slope here is that like we never make outward recommendations of what somebody should try, because that's just not how our bodies are made. But we can give you a direction based on factual things, you know what I mean? So, and that is exactly why it's taken so long, because we want to do it right. And we've got to get good feedback from people that like, yeah, this is pretty consistent, where like, if you want this, and this, and like 8 other things, this is kind of what most people would recommend. So this is basically trying to automate a conversation with a person, and it's never going to be like one size fits all. But from a graphic design standpoint, I've been like really fascinated by this concept, and then the way a way to make it look cool. So I'm really excited about it. It's been a beast to work on, but that's one of our next cannabis related infographics we'll be rolling out. So yeah, I think like the art of it is definitely not for everybody. That's one thing I've noticed. So it's not enough to make us kind of change, because like me personally as a designer, I really like that style too. And I think it's the most open-ended. The fact that it is like clean and not like overly crowded with color and stuff happening, it means that it is technically more accessible and more universal in use. So that's great. But I can say that like some of our like older clients and stuff, baby boomer generation and up, have struggled with it a little bit. Part of it is just the way that we work with typography, and part of it is that like this minimalist Bauhaus type of vibe, I guess it doesn't speak to everybody, and that's fine. I mean, there is an artistic angle to what Goldleaf does with our infographics and art prints. So no, they're not going to work for everybody. And that's kind of the feedback I've heard from like the older generations. They'd like kind of like a large print version of some of these. And that's a great idea, but I don't think that we can always do it, just because of how much info is sometimes packed into these things. And then on the other side, I think is kind of the traditional stoner culture, the traditional stoner aesthetic. We don't really jive with that. And I also don't think that those audiences really like what we do. That's just based off of us being in the industry, shaking around for a while. We've gotten a lot of like features and interviews in these like traditional cannabis publications, like High Times and Herb and Kindland and all those. And it never really I would say, like from a marketing standpoint, like blows the top off or anything. And I think that's because like our audience are people who are like highly functional stoners, or people who like to nerd out on things. So like intellectual connoisseur type people, or people who are new to it, which is the biggest group. Just getting into it, just starting out. They need some guidance, and they want something that has like a level of authority behind it. And we do our best to cite all of our sources, and like I mentioned, we when we do scientific communication, we're pulling it from primary source materials as opposed to like Wikipedia or something like that. So we do have a researcher on our team, and he's very diligent about that side of things, as well as like keeping everything updated. So we do versions of a lot of our pieces as new things come up, you know. We'll update them. So, you know, for that reason, some of our wellness stuff we have to produce in small batches, just because, you know, version 14 is going to have to, you know, augment how we communicate, like maybe what ailments could be helpful for certain cannabinoids. You know, after a recent study, we found that, you know, migraines are really not great for a particular cannabinoid or something like that. So we'll update it. Like in terms of seniors, the journals are the most common, and they're often, at least from what I've heard with our fulfillment team and customer support team, a lot of the times it's going to be like gifted to them, just because of the circles that Goldleaf travels. You know, we're not really able to put ourselves in front of seniors. You know, I suppose we could try an effort to solve that, but you know, I've always thought the best advocate for Goldleaf is gonna be like somebody, you know, like a boots on the ground person, instead of like an article they read in AARP or I don't know, any type of marketing like that, because like what we do requires a little explanation. It's not like you can see an ad for it and know what it is and be like persuaded to click on something. Now, we are not allowed to do any sort of ads, of course, just because of the topics we cover. But we have, I mean, early on, we were able to squeak some things through the cracks. So I do have like real world metrics of how that went. And it was hit and miss. Some of it was just totally a waste of like ad spend or whatever, but we learned something from it. And some of it was like crazy successful, just crazy successful. And then it all got stamped out, you know? So plus anything that worked 2 years ago, pre-COVID, is not going to work now. Like, it really is a very different landscape digitally. For marketing, communication, like everything has changed. How you write emails to people, like call to actions are different. What social media platforms are beneficial to brands has totally changed. It's really interesting from like a digital strategy side how freaking fast that happened, because you know, we're watching it slowly happen, and then COVID hits. It totally turned Goldleaf on our heads, and we had to kind of adjust, and then we had to adjust back, sort of, because it changed. You know, it's kind of continued to change again. So I'm sure every cannabis brand out there has like plenty of interesting adventures and or sob stories about how COVID has gone for their business, but it is really interesting from like a marketing side how that has impacted this subject in particular. And stupid enough, like once the Farm Bill passed in 2018, legalizing CBD, that is really when the hammer came down across everything, which is fascinating, because like before it was seen as fully illegal, and we're able to like advertise books and stuff. And then once it was not, it was like, nope, you can't do anything. In fact, I see you're not doing anything illegal, but there is the word cannabis connected with your domain. So no, you can't have this like image of a book. It's kind of ridiculous. And I've, for my own edification, I sometimes will argue with various entities, Pinterest or Amazon, knowing full well that it's not going to help. Nothing's going to change on our behalfs. But I just like to call out the hypocrisy in their policies, that like verbatim, we don't violate. So I'm like, can you explain to me how a journal about this subject or an infographic is a consumable drug? You know, and I'll look at the policies with them, and they'll just be like, I don't know, I'll have to escalate this. Just get me off the phone or whatever. Um, I honestly don't really waste my time with that anymore because it's so futile. But we're not the only brand in the cannabis space who's affected by this. I would imagine a lot of what you guys are doing is the same because you don't really touch the plant much. It's more about education and information and networking, and it doesn't matter. I don't know. Like it's really the algorithms in the end because you know, I've worked with people in who like work at Facebook, and they can flip the switch and enable something. They're like, yeah, this is fine, go. And then, you know, 24 hours passes and it's blocked again because of the algorithm. Which makes me think, this is kind of off the cuff, but like with all the changes at Twitter, with Elon Musk and him kind of like really loosening the First Amendment stuff, I wonder if that is gonna trickle down to like cannabis ads. Not honestly, I think Twitter's probably the worst platform for digital ads because of how fast it moves. So not like I would, like Goldleaf would do anything there. We don't really have a Twitter presence, but just thinking about it, I wonder if that is something that he's considering, because he so totally should be if he's got this like libertarian approach to it. There would be so many bad actors if he did do that. And you know, that's honestly, I'm sure that is the logic behind Amazon, all them bringing down the hammer in 2018. I remember when that happened, there were so many bogus CBD brands. Like it was a hot mess. And so I don't fault them for staying on top of that. I'm glad they do that. It's healthy for the community as a whole to tamp out those, like, I don't know, bad brands who are selling snake oil, sort of making promises that aren't accurate or having like a very bad product. Yeah. So when I started Goldleaf, I really wanted to start in the cannabis space because that was where my heart was in terms of the science of it, the culture, the community, the social justice side. Like I was really into that. So I wanted to stick a flag in the ground because nobody was doing anything like what we started doing. But I always wanted Goldleaf to be like a wider botanical science brand. I just generally love that topic, not just with cannabis, but with any plants. And I like applying it to things that people really enjoy. So, you know, I could see Goldleaf branching out eventually into like teas or mushrooms. Um, a lot of folks have suggested like, oh, you've got to do spirits or bourbon or whiskey, and awesome. I think there's a statement for that, or like a place for that. But the difference is that there's not like really a medical side or a wellness side with that. There is I mean, it checks the other boxes, but then in terms of like internet red tape, it's going to be slapped with the same red tape, which is going to be really annoying. So when we were in the thick of COVID, I wanted to you know, I mentioned doing some pivots as a company. Part of that was my own like well-being, wanting to just stay fresh and stay frosty. So I wanted to start down one of those other paths, and coffee makes the most sense because culturally it's very similar to cannabis in terms of how ubiquitous it is, how well loved it is, and then the nuance of preparation, the rituals behind it. The amount of like different cultivars out there, the history, there's a lot of commonality. And then the other part, which is just a bonus, is I've met virtually nobody who enjoys cannabis who doesn't enjoy coffee unless they have a medical reason, you know. But pretty much everybody likes coffee who likes cannabis. So it felt like a really fun next step in the evolution of what Goldleaf does. And I was excited to kind of apply our methodology to a new subject. So yeah, we jumped into the coffee space a little bit and did some infographics on things that, again, people were curious about, and there wasn't any. I mean, there's a lot more stuff about coffee, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't like this totally thorough and then visually pleasing. It was the two things. Oftentimes you'll find one or the other with coffee, at least from what we've done. And again, taste is something that is unique to everybody. So if somebody does not like the style we do, totally get it. I'm not dinging you for that. But yeah, so it felt like there was a great opportunity to kind of apply some of the design styles and the research styles and make some new infographics about a topic we all also love. And we paired it with a journal. We worked with, so I'm from Cincinnati. We worked with a couple different roasters here that I really think are some of the best ones in the country in terms of their approach to it. They're very, like, they spend a lot of time with like internationally visiting all of these different coffee plantations. They're often like single origin. They have this, it's like fair trade, I guess, is kind of not all that great. So there's like there's next steps, and they kind of cater to that highest echelon. So we partnered with their roasters and baristas to kind of workshop through everything with the journal. I'm really happy how it turned out. But yeah, in terms of how I enjoy them, it's not very fun, but I enjoy them at totally different parts of the day. Just because of how my body is. I'm hypersensitive to caffeine, and I'm also very hypersensitive to cannabis. So I do have my medical card for autoimmune stuff, and microdosing is kind of my secret sauce. So I'll normally start that like midday once I start feeling like some of the symptoms coming on. And I can't have coffee after 12 o'clock anyway, or I just straight up won't sleep. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm so sensitive to caffeine, but I freaking love coffee. So that's my own personal ritual. I really kind of nerd out on the process in the morning, like with different beans. Some of my favorite are going to be like naturally processed, like Ethiopian varieties. I love the fruitiness. I often do pour overs. And kind of enjoy that. And then later in the day, I kind of pivot over to my other plant love, which is both helpful and enjoyable. Happy to. So as like a shopper myself, I definitely look for like sustainable goods. I want to, and it's probably a testament to where I am in my life, but I want to buy like one thing that is well made and that will last, So I feel like that is better for a lot of reasons. One, you're probably getting a more interesting, thought out product, and then two, you have the benefits of like the environmental side of it not being something that you throw away in a week or a year or whatever. So I actually cut my teeth in the fashion world. I co-owned a denim company, a sustainable denim company, before Goldleaf, and I wouldn't call myself a fashionista or anything. It wasn't my love, but I really did like the operational side and the sourcing. And one thing that we did is we were the most sustainable denim company on the planet at the time. We did a Kickstarter, and at the time it was, I think, the third highest grossing Kickstarter in the fashion space. And this was a while ago though. But what we were able to do is we were able to source like bespoke jeans, not for everybody, within like the region that we live in Ohio. So most denim and jeans were originally, made by Levi's. That would have been in Tennessee. A lot of the denim was made in North Carolina. So we were able to kind of connect with that denim spot, Cone Mills, and get hardware from Kentucky, build it in Tennessee, finish it in Cincinnati. We had like organic, we did like sweats and stuff too. And we had like organic cotton from Asheville by this ex-Patagonia dude. And anyway, like that was a big part of what we did. And I guess that just like imprinted on me that like, it's not really difficult to do that if you start out doing that. You know what I mean? So like if you start out making things super cheap, you know, very, very throwaway, low, like high planet impact or whatever, it's really hard as a business to then backpedal because things are probably gonna be twice as expensive, and if not more. And like with Goldleaf, I kind of started down that path at the start, again, from my experience with the other brand, and just my desire to do that. So we kind of initiated the carbon offset shipping for everything we receive or send. We spent a lot of, or I spent a lot of time product testing and finding the most sustainable binding methods. There's a lot of like really nasty glues, and the way that these glues are created for like perfect bound or case bound things. While like the glue's not toxic when it's in the book you have, the process to make it is kind of like indigo for denim. Indigo comes from a plant, but it totally destroys some of the places that it comes from in South America because of how they manufacture it. They're just irresponsible. So same thing with a lot of these glues and adhesives. So we settled on like this thread out sewn binding style that has a lot of benefits in my opinion. One, there's no glues or any of that kind of stuff involved. It's the most sustainable way to process it because we can use like organic thread, and that's essentially it, apart from the electricity it takes to run the machine. And then, you know, our paper stocks are all Forest Stewardship Council certified and recycled and stuff. And I really wanted to do hemp. I always have, but the hemp paper industry is just a little behind still. It's only been in the last year or so that I've seen hemp stocks that are the appropriate smoothness and thickness that would work in a journal like ours. But accessing them has still been a challenge, though I think that is something we'll be able to do by next year, which I'm excited about. And you would think like a brand like ours, like, oh, it's probably hemp paper, but it literally has not been possible to do it, even though we've wanted to. So that's kind of the product side of things. In terms of like the community side, yeah, we've worked with a lot of different nonprofits. Again, like that's the joy of owning your own company, is you can kind of use it to do things you want to do. And we've wanted to support like the positive growth in the community. So we've partnered with a couple different charities that work to achieve that, as well as things not associated with cannabis at all. Like, let's see, the firefighters out west, like when, I mean, I think this is kind of a non-stop fight, but we did kind of like some bundled products where the proceeds would be donated to that entity. And then we've done other like collaborative things where we would create a piece specifically like earmarked so that whenever it is sold, those proceeds are donated to that entity. And we've got, all of those are still present on our site. We've got information about like where it's going once you're on there. But yeah, those projects have always been fun. Like I really like doing these collaborations for a few reasons. One, it kind of opens up the possibility of things that maybe I'm not exposed to. You know, like that concentrates print I mentioned, or we did another collaboration with Potley, which makes like infused honey and infused olive oil, all about decarboxylation. For Last Prisoner Project, which is one of the nonprofits, we did a Southern California travel inspired art piece. So this is not an infographic, but it turned out to be kind of like a Where's Waldo of cannabis stuff on the beach. So at like glance, it's very subtle, like we like. You look at it and you're like, oh, that's a very cool bright, colorful illustration of a Southern California beach. But if you look closer, there's like I can't like 23 different cannabis references on it. And so we did that piece with them, and we had the original from the artist Eugenia Mello. I think she's from Argentina. We had the original that we auctioned off, or they auctioned off. And now whenever that piece still exists, so like if anybody is interested, you can still find it on our site, and those proceeds will still go where they need to go for that piece. But yeah, that's my favorite way to do it, because it's kind of something that can be ongoing, and it seems more like connected. Does that make sense? Like, I guess I'm not articulating it very well, but it's kind of like ongoing, I guess, is what I like about it. And so yeah. I think honestly, I wouldn't say it's like this one thing. I think it's just the conversations and feedback from people who have tried stuff that we've done. Honestly, good or bad. I really like hearing their experiences, and sometimes it's going to be like, why the heck can't the contrast be higher on this? I can't read it, or or just different ways that they've used things that we've done, maybe with that it was not the original intended way. So I see that a lot with people who share entries from the grow planner, like the cultivation side. They don't always use the entry pages like I think we originally designed them, but they use them in a way that befits their grow style and their unique like environment. And I love that, because I really tried to make these like all of the UX of this stuff as universal as possible, because everybody's situation is different, especially with the growing stuff. And that is certainly a passion of mine. So while that stuff, like the grower side of stuff, gets probably the littlest attention in press and stuff, it's been like an anchor for Goldleaf. Like, there's not a lot of good grow tools out there, good grower information, and just like our bodies, like everybody's grow environment is different. So finding answers or learning how to troubleshoot, like who are you going to talk to about that? If you're in a state with home grow, you could go to your like grow shop and talk to them, but you know, they're going to be framing it in a way that's either something they don't understand because they're not in your space. They don't know what cultivars you have and what specifics they might require. Or maybe you're in a state where you're not having those conversations because there's not like a grow store near you. It's just Amazon. And you know, where are you going to go for those answers? So I really do get inspiration from like comments and feedback, and when people send us their entries, it's always so cool to see how people are using the stuff, and that kind of keeps me going. I mean, I think the one thing that you can do as a consumer is buy from the growers who do it right. That's the biggest thing. In my state, options are super sparse. There's only 2 dispensaries in the entire city of Cincinnati, and I mean, I don't know if they're gonna see this, but neither of them are very good. But it's not all on them, honestly. Like the way that the legislation rolled out is difficult for any business to offer like diverse products, and to offer not just diverse in the sense that like what cannabinoids do these contain, but also diverse in like the grow styles. So in terms of sustainability, like sourcing sun grown stuff is so much better for the environment. And there's also going to be more terpene content in any of sun-grown options. So there, there's benefits there. From a grower, it's going to take a little longer. You might not have the same weight. So obviously that's a reason why folks in Ohio don't often go there, because they are legally responsible for hitting a certain weight as a producer, or they lose their license and money in escrow. It's really dumb. It doesn't incentivize like true quality or innovation. But what I'll seek out, and they do have greenhouse ops and stuff. So I mean, there is this hybrid approach. So I look for that, and I also look for I will read up on their IPMs. So like, what do they do for pest management? There's only, I think so at the one dispensary that I'll frequent, there's maybe like 23 different growers represented, and there's only 3 of them that are like pesticide free or organic pesticides. The rest of them do all of the like the worst stuff you could imagine, but they pass the tests, so it's fine, and maybe it is, but from an environmental impact, like what's happening with that wastewater, like there's just a lot there. The fact that you're buying that stuff means that the factories that make it are going to keep purring it out, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of downstream effects to this. So like as a consumer, I think getting stuff local, getting stuff sun-grown or hybrid, and getting stuff that have like a smart IPM plan. I'm not saying you shouldn't, as a grower, you shouldn't use stuff to protect them. You can, but there's plenty of natural, safe options, safe all the way through till flowering, that's not going to impact the environment or impact you as a user. So, make the choice with your dollars so that those become more prominent in the market. I think we'll probably get there, but people have to be kind of aware of it and then also care. Because like if you're like, well, this one is, I don't know what the prices are like by you, but this one is 85 for like 5 grams, and then this one is 115 for 5 grams. Which one are you gonna pick? If you're just a regular consumer in Ohio, you're probably gonna opt for the cheaper one. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like that's kind of my approach to it. It honestly, if you live in a state where you can grow your own, I think that is another great way to do it. Not just to cut out like the big commercial farms, but it's just generally less wasteful. And I think that there's like certainly a wellness element to it, like mentally, if you're growing and harvesting your own stuff. I think that's awesome for folks who live in a state where you can do that. I hope Ohio gets there at some point. Fingers crossed. I really would like to finish our Choose Your Own Adventure infographics. They've been biting at my subconscious for like 1.5 years, and I really want to finish them. I've probably had more trouble with those than any other piece I've done, both visually and then content-wise. So that's one. And then I'd also like to just manifest like more like projects with others, like more collabs and stuff. We did that so much, and then COVID hit, and that was one of the things that like really slowed down. Which there's a lot of reasons for it, all of them very logical. But I hope to kind of get back into that, and some of that's on me for like freeing up the bandwidth to do it, but I really like doing that, and I hope that we can have some like really inspiring projects in 2023. That's tough. I think like there's a two-parter. Like one, I think people generally don't. I think they're getting it. This may be like an old answer, but they're not used to the way that cannabis is dispensed and used, especially for the wellness folks. They're used to pharma, the doctor, somebody with boatloads of degrees and doctorates and telling them exactly what they can do, when they can do it. Take it in the morning and the evening, only this much. Take it with water. You should definitely have an empty stomach, like all this stuff. You're just used to that. We're programmed to be like, that's what it is. And then cannabis kind of being shoved into the pharmaceutical market, people expect that, but they don't get it because it's not possible. It's like bad form to try and do that, to try and fit that like square peg in the round hole. So I think that's one of the biggest confusing pieces, is that it's treated as like an opiate or like any prescribed hardcore thing. But then the hot tips from them are like, okay, now you have this. I don't know what's going to work for your body, so you've got to do some personal experimentation. And how many times are you as a wellness or somebody who's getting pharmaceuticals, how many times are you asked to test it on your body? Like never. Never is the answer. So it's like, it's really confusing to people for that reason. And that's part of the reason why like education is important, as well as like letting people know that they need that education. Don't just like freestyle. And if you are, just keep track of what you're doing. It's simple. But I think that those like points of letting people know that like you can't kill yourself from this, so just calm down about it, and go, start low, go slow. Like great phrase, musical to say, totally true. But that's kind of where the insights stop from most doctors. Like I know in Ohio, my prescribing physician, I've had conversations with her. She knows my familiarity with it, but she didn't on our first meeting, and didn't offer me very much information. You know what I mean? Have you tried it before? Yes, I have in my life. Okay. You're approved. I'd recommend just start slow. And I'm like, what does that mean? So nothing else beyond that. I can only assume that's how most conversations go. So you're basically saying like, hey, have you done cannabis on the black market before? Great. Do whatever you did there. It's weird. And I think it is confusing to people. It sends mixed signals. There should probably be more, if you're mandating people to see a doctor, you should also mandate them to go through like a cheat sheet or something, or give you something to help. And some states do a good job at that. I know that for a fact. Every state is different how they do this. Since I moved to Ohio, I'm kind of clicking into these systems. And Ohio's weird. It's not the best one. But you roll with what you got. So. We're doing a bunch of really cool like promotions for the holidays on our shop. So check that out if you're seeing this in time or hearing this in time. And then for like next season, we'll be doing more content for the coffee space. We have some cool like non-product related projects we're working on, involving like some AI systems with AI art, which is kind of a whole topic in and of itself, especially from like a designer who's embracing some of that stuff as like a tool in the tool belt, But I think those are going to be really cool. So those will be on our site. We'll have some videos and stuff. So I'm intentionally being vague there because I don't want to spoil it, but that's going to be neat. And then, beyond that, I think next year we are going to be focusing more on kind of establishing these community relationships, these like B2B collaborations, That's one of our focus between myself and my business partner for 2023, getting back into that. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, that's my answer there. Like probably variety. I like seeing like new ways of doing it. Like with cannabis, that's kind of what I'm waiting for in Ohio, because it's just limited. And that's what I'm used to from my time in Colorado and stuff, and Michigan and whatnot. So I'm excited to see more of that, and it is starting to happen. So in some trips to our local dispensary, we're starting to see the options grow in a positive way. Not all this strawberry cough or all the same damn stuff. I think they're starting to realize that especially the medical folks need something more specialized. So they're getting to a point where they're dabbling. And then in terms of the growers in the state, I think they're getting established enough where they don't have that risk I mentioned of like failure. So now that they've established like their bedrock or whatever, they're able to allocate a little space for weird stuff. And I like that. It's fun to kind of follow along and see what at least the three I mentioned, the three that do everything right from top to bottom, what they're doing.